Primordial beings have always been at the center of every ancient myth. They are the ones that are believed to have come before everything, shaping the world. In every myth, culture, and religion, these beings are believed to have existed in a time when the universe was chaotic and untamed, and from this chaos, they created the beautiful world we now live in. Each culture or belief system has different ways of interpreting these beings and their role in bringing life into existence. In Greek and Roman mythology, the primordial deities are the first generation of gods and goddesses. They believed that everything began with chaos, a vast, empty void. To them, chaos wasn't necessarily evil, it was just a state of nothingness. Here's a little story on Greek mythology on creation according to Hesiod. Hesiod was an ancient Greek poet generally thought to have been active between 750 and 650 BC. His Theogony is considered the standard creation myth of Greek mythology. In his Theogony, a poem that describes the origins and genealogies of the Greek gods, the genesis of the gods begins with the spontaneous emergence of four primordial entities. First, chaos, a vast chasm or void, came into existence, representing the initial state of disorder before the cosmos was shaped. After chaos, Gaia, the earth, arose as the solid foundation of all life. Gaia is often seen as the nurturing mother figure from whom much of creation springs. Then came Tartarus, the deep abyss beneath the earth. And finally, Eros, known as love, who is described as the fairest of the gods. From chaos, two other primordial beings were born: Erebus, known as darkness, and Nyx, known as night. Nyx in turn united with Erebus to produce Ether, also called light, and Hemera, also known as day. Meanwhile, Gaia or Gaia began producing her own offspring without a mate. She gave birth to Uranus, the sky, who would later become her husband and her equal. Together, Gaia and Uranus would become the parents of the Titans, the first generation of gods. Gaia also gave birth to the Aurea, the mountains, and Pontus, the sea, further shaping the world with these natural, physical entities. The story of Uranus's castration at the hands of Cronus due to Gaia's involvement is seen as the explanation for why the sky and earth are separated. Meanwhile, the Egyptians had their own take on primordial existence. Their creation myth speaks of Nun, the primordial waters that existed before anything else. Nun is essentially the lifeblood from which everything emerges. From these waters came Atum, a self-created god who, through sheer will, brought forth the first elements of creation, air and moisture. These elements would eventually evolve into the gods who controlled different aspects of life. Most cultures associated their primordial beings with natural elements such as fire, earth, water, and darkness or chaos. The Norse mythology is not in any way different. The world in Norse myths started with a massive empty space called the Ginnunga Gap. On either side of this space is where you'll find the icy Niflheim and the fiery Muspelheim. After much competition, the ice and fire finally met in the middle, creating water droplets that fell into the abyss and created life. The first living being was a giant named Ymir, who was equal male and female. After Odin and his brothers killed Ymir, they used his body to form the earth. His blood became the oceans, and his bones turned into mountains. After that, they gave life to the first humans, Ask and Embla, and built Asgard, their home. Even further east in Mesopotamian myth, the same idea of primordial chaos appears again. This time, the world is formed through the figures of Apsu and Tiamat, the freshwater and saltwater deities respectively. Tiamat is said to represent creation and destruction. On the one hand, she is the source of life, the oceanic depths that house all potential for existence. On the other hand, she also becomes a monstrous being of chaos when she rebels against the younger gods. In a famous battle, Marduk, one of the younger gods, slays Tiamat, and much like Ymir in Norse mythology, her body is used to create the heavens and the earth. The Bible also has its version of the creation of the world. It all begins with God facing a dark, formless, and empty earth and speaking to it. He speaks, and with just a command, light appears, splitting the darkness into day and night. This act of dividing and shaping continues as God creates the sky, land, and seas. As the days progress, God fills the earth with life, from plants to animals, and finally humans, who are created in His own image according to the Bible. Unlike other stories where the gods rise from chaos and carve the world from it, in the biblical story, God's creation was done without struggle. struggle. Humans, of course, come into the picture eventually in these stories. Sometimes the primordial beings themselves create humanity, like in the case of the Greek Titans, who, though not as old as the original primordial beings like Gaia and Chaos, are still ancient in their own right. The Titans were the ones who laid the groundwork for the Olympian gods and, by extension, the creation of humans. Interestingly, the Sumerians' belief is slightly different. According to Sumerian myth, the Anunnaki, which translates to those who came from the sky, created humans out of their need for workers. The gods were originally responsible for maintaining the earth, but over time, the lower gods grew tired of doing all the hard labor, such as digging canals and working in agriculture. Eventually, the lower gods, who did the hardest work, rebelled. It was then that the idea of creating humans was born. The gods decided to create a race that could relieve them of their tasks. Enki, along with the mother goddess Ninhursag, took on the task of creating the first humans. The first man, called Adamu, was made from clay, and his body was infused with the blood of a rebellious god who had been sacrificed. This gave humanity both divine traits and a duty to serve the gods. However, there are controversies to this story. There's a popular belief that the Anunnaki were not gods, but extraterrestrial beings who came from a distant planet to Earth in search of gold. In the process, they enslaved and genetically modified the early hominids on Earth to create new humans that were intelligent enough to mine gold for them. These stories were more than just entertaining tales for ancient peoples. They were a way to make sense of the world around them. When a massive storm hit or a volcano erupted, they didn't see them as random natural events. They were expressions of these primordial beings' influence. Every earthquake, every flood, could be seen as a reminder of the power these ancient forces still held, even after the world had been shaped into something more ordered and structured. And while we might no longer interpret natural disasters as the workings of primordial beings today, the concept is still seen in modern storytelling. Think about the works of H.P. Lovecraft and his pantheon of ancient cosmic entities like Cthulhu. These beings, much like the primordial gods, exist outside of time and space, representing the unknowable, the chaotic, and the uncontrollable. They have that same primal fear, the idea that the universe is full of forces far beyond our understanding, forces that could wipe us out or reshape everything at any moment. Do you believe the world was created out of nothing? What part of these stories resonates with your belief? If you enjoyed this video, follow us for more content on ancient myths and legends you don't want to miss. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.